Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Three Wide. I'm your host, Radney Crawford. This week, we'll be going over all the action from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway and the Pennzoil 400, where William Byron came away with his fifth career win, dominating the day at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Now, Byron did have to do a little work to get this race win, as Kyle Larson, his teammate, had gotten the lead and looked to be well on his way to the victory until a late caution came out due to Eric Almirola spinning and making contact with the wall. NASCAR threw the quick caution, and it set up an overtime finish where, during some pit strategy, Martin Truex Jr. decided to stay out on the track. And hey, I can understand that. You can instantly put yourself in a shot for the win with that kind of move. Unfortunately, he was the only driver to stay out. Kyle Larson, William Byron, many others came in and took two tires. Now, if Truex had probably had three more cars stay out with him, I believe he would have had a even better shot at getting the victory, and that move would have worked. Unfortunately, like I said, he was the only one. Byron was able to overtake him going into turn 3, going to the white flag, and Byron scored the race win. Now, Byron led 176 laps, so he definitely was the deserving driver to win this race. And Hendrick Motorsports, they come away with a 1-2-3 finish, with Byron getting the win, Larson in second, and Bowman in third. So a solid day all around for this team. And now the question is, how does Byron race from here? Last year, Byron, he started off the year hot, winning 2 of the first 8 races at Atlanta and Martinsville. But after that win at Martinsville, he kind of flew off the radar and wasn't much of a factor in any of the races throughout the rest of the season. So I'll be interested to see where he's at in about 3 or 4 months from now. Does he have any more wins? But mainly, how many more top 5s and top 10s does he have? Because if he wants to become a true championship threat and make a good deep run into the playoffs on a performance base, he's going to have to get more consistent finishes, get more top 10s, get more top 5s to get to that point. Now, before we get started on our next topic, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. Now, Hunt to Harvest is back with us for our second season here at 3 Wide, and we are excited to have them back. Right now, they're having a special sale on their long sleeve and short sleeve shirts, as well as the new Mystery Box Special, and that is where you just simply click the Mystery Box option at the top of the page, and you can get 3 shirts chosen at random sent to you for $33, and at $11 a shirt. You can't beat this deal. Simply select your size, hit add to cart, and when you go to check out, be sure to enter that promo code RADNEY18923 to get even more savings on your purchase. And you can get all this done at hunttoharvest.com. Now, one thing I was really surprised about was the lack of competitiveness of the Fords. I really expected RFK and Penske Racing to go out and beat the top 4 teams, have solid days. But it just didn't really happen. You did have Brad Keselowski running in the top 10 for most of the early part of the race. But Ryan Blaney, even Logano, who started on the pole, just wasn't much of a factor. Austin Cindric, he was the top finishing Ford in 6th. And Kevin Harvick was next, finishing in 9th for Stewart-Haas Racing. Outside of that, Ford just really wasn't all that competitive. I figured Logano and Blaney would have the best chances of getting a race win, contending for the win of the Fords. They've been really strong at Vegas, but it just didn't come together. Logano was knocked out after making pretty good contact with the wall, spinning through the infield and getting some airtime, which pretty much destroyed the frame and the toe links of his car, and he finished in last place with a DNF. Now, I don't know if they just missed the setup on this race, but they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and look at what they did wrong or what they could do better, because Vegas comes up in the playoffs again in the fall, and they're going to want to be more competitive than they were this week. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back and attack Phoenix. And Stewart-Haas Racing, it was a very underwhelming day for them. As I said, Kevin Harvick was the lone top 10 finisher. Outside of that, they struggled as a whole with the team. They were mostly in the back half of the field at the end of the race. Now, there were 3 drivers who continued their hot start in the season 3 races in. Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, they're the only drivers so far to have a top 10 in the first 3 races. Now, Bowman does have 2 top 5s to add to that. So a solid start for these 2 drivers. For Suarez, a much better start than he had last year, where at the beginning of the season it was a little inconsistent, where he'd had these strong runs and good races, but he just could never close it out. Something would happen either mechanically, get caught up in an accident, whether he was overdriving the car, but he seems to have it together so far at this point in the season. And Bowman, really kind of having a career year at the start. He's, like I mentioned last week, signed that extension with Hendrick, started out on the pole at Daytona, and has just went on from there and had a solid start to the year. And Corey LaJoie, who scored a 20th place finish, has now finished in the top 20 in the first 3 races of the season. And while that may not sound like much of an accomplishment, it's a pretty big deal for this team. Corey, everybody's always known that he's had the talent. He could be a good driver at another team, but he signed with Spire Motorsports to not only build himself up, but this team and turn them into better competitors. And last year they did go into the season with higher hopes than what they finished with. But so far this season, he's able to put them where they believe they need to be. And if he can keep these top 20 and top 15 runs, it won't be long before they'll be sneaking in some top 10s and then some top 5s. It's been done before. I know it sounds crazy, a team like Spire Motorsports moving themselves up that high in the ladder, but it can be done. You saw it with, Furniture Row Racing years ago when they finally got that alliance deal with Joe Gibbs Racing and got Martin Truex Jr. They went from start and park team to championship winners. So it is possible, and you got to think they're, pretty fired up for how this season has started, especially with Atlanta just around the corner, a race they nearly won last year. So solid start for Corey and his team at Spire Motorsports. And there was also 2 drivers who I mentioned last week that needed to come into Vegas and leave with just solid finishes. Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace, the 23-11 drivers, have had a rough start of it. Tyler Reddick, he hadn't finished a race coming into Vegas. He comes away with a solid 15th place finish, gets the top 15. While it's nothing to write home about, it is a step in the right direction to get more consistency and get those better finishes, because we know Tyler, if he has speed, he's going to be dangerous. He's just got to get that momentum going his way. And today was a step in that direction. So we'll see if he can continue that at Phoenix and build himself up to, possibly have a pretty hot summer as we get into the season. Now, Bubba Wallace comes away with an incredible 4th place finish. And like last week, Bubba, he was running in the top 10 for most of the race. He didn't have any mechanical failures, no accidents on the track. And he was able to make the most of that overtime restart and come away with a 4th place finish, being the highest placed Toyota. So Bubba, with his run last year, we saw him get hot, especially as we got closer to the playoffs, getting more consistent. If he can start doing that this early in the year and keep it going, he's going to be a true playoff contender and could possibly sneak away a couple wins. Now, the biggest story of the weekend was obviously Chase Elliott, who was injured his leg while in a snowboarding accident in Colorado. This news broke Friday afternoon, Friday night, depending on where you are. And nobody knew really the extent of the injuries. They did say that he was going into surgery, and 3 hours of surgery, he was able to be released and went home today. Now, there's no timetable for his return. He did suffer a fractured tibia, so it's, I'm sure, all going to depend on the healing process and the physical therapy. And who's going to sub for him from here on out is not real sure. Today, Josh Berry filled in for him this weekend. This was Josh's first laps in the next-gen car at practice, qualifying, and in today's race. So he had to get acclimated to this next-gen car pretty quick. And while the finish wasn't, spectacular, it was a 29th place finish, a couple laps down, I think he completed the task he needed to. He didn't damage the car. He didn't get in a wreck, kept the car clean, and came away with a finish, completed most of the laps, all but 2 laps. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. They did say at Hendrick Motorsports they hope to have a decision tomorrow before the car and the teams roll out on Tuesday to Phoenix. So could it be Josh Berry again? I certainly hope so. I would like to see Josh get some more laps in this next-gen car, because I believe Josh Berry is a cup-level talent, and this could be a way of him, trying out and trying to catch the eyes of certain teams that may be looking for a driver next season. So could it be another driver like Justin Allgaier, who is strong at Phoenix? He's and could go in there and really make this team competitive off the get-go, because he's turned more laps in the next-gen cars than Josh, is another possibility. Outside of junior motorsports drivers, I don't see what the options are. You got Brandon Jones, Sam Mayer, Josh Berry, and Justin Allgaier right there. Sam Mayer, I think, is too young. He's not ready to jump up in the Cup car yet. Let him focus on the Xfinity Series. Brandon Jones, kind of the same deal. I don't think he's ready to get in the car to run in the Cup Series. Your best 2 options are Josh and Justin. Could there be a surprise pick. Possibly, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I think Josh Berry is the best pick to go with, and let him get those laps in that 9 car, because this is a top team. This isn't some mid backpack car. This is a team that's won a championship, that's won multiple races, and are week in and week out contenders. So a great car, a great opportunity for whoever does fill that seat until Chase comes back. Now, I'm sure in the next week or two that we'll get a better idea on the timetable. But for right now, I would expect Chase to be out for at least 4 races, possibly more, depending on the extent of the injury. And with Chase's injury, that led to a very big discussion on social media as far as drivers' extracurricular activities. You had, fans saying, they'd be putting, if they were owners, they put restrictions on drivers, what they can do off the track, away from the track in their own personal time. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, these guys are people just like us. They have to have their time away from their job, away from their track, to decompress, to get the stress out, to block out the noise, and just be themselves. This isn't like Chase decided he was going to take up snowboarding on a whim and he went out there and tried it and he got injured. This is something Chase grew up doing, has plenty of experience on, and he got hurt. It could happen at any time. He could be walking from his motorhome to the car and the same thing could happen. Now, Rick Mast put it best on social media. I want to read his tweet word for word, but he had sent out that Rick Hendrick and understands that these guys need to live their lives. Chase had an accident doing something he's very experienced at. He could have been hurt walking down the sidewalk. Crap happens. And to me, that sums it all up. That's what a lot of media members were saying as well. You can't put these guys in bubble wrap and tell them what they can and can't do out the track. I mean, how would you like if your boss came to you and said, hey, I heard you were going to the beach this weekend, and what you plan on doing? And you tell them surfing. No, you can't do that. That's too dangerous. We pay you to come here and work. You're not going to be very happy with it. You're going to let it be known you're not happy with it. You have drivers like Kyle Larson, Byron, and Bowman, Chase's teammates, who run late model cars in the off season and even during the season. Kyle Larson, his schedule is packed all year long at dirt races, because that's what Kyle enjoys doing. That's probably how that's his outlet. Bowman, he's been known to run the Chili Bowl. Byron, he was at the Snowball Derby this past year and has run many more late model races over the off season. These guys have to be able to just go out and be themselves. So putting restrictions on them, I don't see that being a win for anyone in any case. And even drivers who are also owners like Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, said this incident wouldn't change their opinion, wouldn't change their thought process on restricting their drivers, because they said the same thing. These guys have to be able to go out and live their life, and you can't pigeonhole them into just sitting at their apartment doing nothing, or sitting at their home and doing nothing. So it's a bad deal all around. It's unfortunate for Chase. It's unfortunate for his sponsors and for his team. But things like this have happened before. They've obviously happened to Chase, and it's going to happen again. So you got to be able to live your life. And also the discussion was the playoff waiver. Fans were saying some were saying that they don't think NASCAR should grant Chase the playoff waiver. The playoff waiver has been filed. It hasn't been approved or denied yet. They will probably wait until they know when Chase will be coming back. But you had fans saying they would deny it because this happened away from the track on his own time outside of the car. The thing is, the precedent's been set where NASCAR has approved waivers for stuff like this before. You look at 2016 when Tony Stewart had a dune buggy accident riding through the desert, injured his back, missed the first 8 races of the season. NASCAR granted his waiver. He won at Sonoma and went on to compete in the playoffs. I don't see how that's any different than now. Chase, to me, what's different with this year, you don't have the top 30 rule anymore on the point standing. So Chase can come back and be 33rd in points. And if he wins at his first race back, he's automatically locked in. He doesn't have to worry about getting in the top 30 and staying there. Also, as I mentioned, precedent's been set. This has happened before. And NASCAR has granted more waivers than they have denied them. I can't think off the top of my head who's been denied a playoff waiver. I'm sure there have been. I'm sure there's been a few. But more than not, you hear drivers being granted playoff waivers for a variety of reasons. So to me, there's no way NASCAR is going to deny this waiver. Chase is going to get it, go back, and most likely win. I see him, depending on how many races is left, but say he misses 5 to 6 races, that's still plenty of time for him to go out and get a race win and lock himself into the playoffs. So we'll know more as this next couple weeks go on how many races he will miss. But right now, that's a pretty big name out of the race week in and week out, but a solid team for somebody to get a chance to show what they have for the Cup Series. And that'll wrap up our episode this week. Thank you for joining me and watching along. Be sure to go down into the description where we have a link to all of our podcast affiliates. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and several others. Also, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you know when our new videos drop. We should drop videos the night of the race after the checkered flag falls, and our podcast drop every Tuesday night where we will go over in depth all the Cup action, Truck action, and Xfinity Series action. Be sure, do not forget to go and check out our sponsor, hunttoharvest.com, and all their current specials, and be sure to enter that promo code RADNEY18923 at checkout to get even better savings on your purchase. And I hope everyone has a safe week. We will meet back same time next week and go over all the action from Phoenix International Raceway.